1, 2, 3. Hey everybody, welcome back to JML Recording. I'm Joshua Lutz, and today we're talking about the movie I just worked on, A Complete Unknown. I just got back from the screening, and it was really fun to see all my microphones and all my outboard gear that I provided for this film, and I figured it'd be fun to just talk about it on this audio engineering channel. It's quite apropos. For instance, if you've seen the movie, you remember that big 77 hanging in front of Timothee Chalamet as he sang masterfully at CBS Studios into it? This beautiful long ribbon mic. This is the mic. I had it re-ribboned, I had it re-chromed, re-clothed, and in the middle of the first take, I saw a nitric connector on it, and then I stopped the film because I said we gotta solder an old Canon jack on there. So for everybody who is wondering about authenticity, I will just tell you, authenticity, period correct equipment was our #1 concern. My boss, Mike Jortner, who's one of the greatest prop masters in the industry, him and I got along like peas and carrots because we both were supremely invested and focused on authenticity. So look at this beautiful gem of a mic. It was also then used in Timothee Chalamet's follow-up movie called Marty Supreme, in which he plays a paddleball player from the 1940s. So it's getting a little worn, but you can see just some hairline scratches. I carried a microfiber cloth and I'd clean it between takes, but when we used it on A Complete Unknown, it had just been re-chromed and it was like brand new. Another microphone that you saw quite a bit in that movie, which you may not know about. These are awesome microphones. These are some West German MBHOs. Check this out, just such a gorgeous mic. Look at this. A big shout out to Joshua Rue at Kismet Recording Studios in Brooklyn for turning me on to these gorgeous mics. You saw probably that we also used this windscreen on KM64s and KM84s. The windscreen obviously detachable from this little SDC pencil mic. These mics sound so good. We had to gaff tape a lot of the connectors because although they're Tuchel at the mic end, we did not want people to see this new nitric jack. Especially on the Newport Folk Festival, you may have noticed that we used M582s on the vocals. I thought that was really cool. Those are gaff because at the time I did not have these vintage period correct Gefell connectors for the M582s, but rather Leo Schall metal connectors, so we had to gaff those. I also have the most iconic microphone from the movie, the 664 EV. I love EV mics. I love them very, very much here at JML Studios. We used a couple other EV mics I wanted to show you really quickly. This is a 631A. Oh no, this is the 630. So the 630 is one of my favorite mics to be used on drums. Run, do not walk to go get a 630 if you don't have one. One of the greatest drum microphones I own. And then another great EV mic, the 635A. This was used on a scene, well actually that scene was cut from the film, so I don't think that one's in it. This is a really obscure microphone that was used in the movie. I'm kind of surprised myself that it made the cut, and I love that it's in the film because I am a huge fan of this mysterious company called BEAG. You may have heard it as EAG, and on Reverb and eBay it's purported as a Telefunken company. I believe it was a company that Telefunken sold a factory and left some equipment, and then BEAG took over and started using the equipment to make their own products. But they made great consoles too, if you can get them converted. These are moving coil, medium diaphragm, dynamic microphones that just sound amazing on guitar cabinets. And we wanted something unique as a vocal, so pachow. They're totally period correct, and they were being used in the States. Although this is the only microphone that was not taken from a reference photo of Dylan. This is a 55S, and you'll notice we used all period correct connectors, which was kind of tough because as soon as I get these mics, since I'm a commercial studio owner, I convert them to XLR in my shop myself. So I had to procure a few that had not been. I was kind of hoping to get to use these in the Dylan film for set dressing, but the scenic department did not use them. But you will notice in the background of CBS Studios a lot of little Neumann boxes. One of the coolest mics, which I don't have here today, that I was able to procure for the film is that M49. And what I wanted to tell you gearheads out there is it's not an M49, it's a 249C. Now Tod Maitland is on that film, one of the greatest sound guys in the movie business. He's a made man. Guy's got more Emmys and awards than anybody in the business. In fact, while we were shooting A Complete Unknown, he turned around to me and he said, "Oh my gosh, I just was nominated for a Lifetime Achievement Award." And he just went back to work. Like, the guy's insane. His dad invented the Maitland mount and did like Tootsie and all these famous movies. His dad is one of the greatest sound guys. And his nephew was the boom operator on A Complete Unknown named Terrence Maitland. And he's one of the nicest human beings I've ever met in my life. I can't say enough about that entire family. You'll see a lot of these AKG mics up on the film. The D20, the D25, the D19, no, D12. We ended up using this on vocals on one of the stages, which was pretty cool. From one of the reference photos, as you can see there, they used a D19 in the studio, and I got this gorgeous one. Look at that D19. Isn't that the most beautiful mic? You know what I love about these mics? This particular one was made in gold, which is extremely rare. Tuchel connector. We had to dye the white cable black. But this box, you know, you look at these gorgeous boxes. This is nerds of the world unite here. They used to hire old shoe cobblers to come in from the neighborhood and make these boxes. And they're just the most gorgeous things in the world. So Mike Jortner, the prop master, came to me and approached me and said, "How can we take this old saltshaker mic and turn it into the mic that was used at CBS Studios?" And when I looked at the reference photo, I saw why it was such a conundrum for them, because they used a radiator hose and they had some kind of yoke around it. I deduced that the yoke was in fact a 77 DX yoke that was connected to an old car radiator hose around this old 633A saltshaker to make that iconic mic. Now, we didn't end up using the mic as the primary mic, but it was used in the film. They ended up putting it on an Atlas stand in the back of CBS Studios, but this is it. And I thought it would be a special treat to show you. This is the mic that I made for the film. And I get to show it off to you guys because unfortunately it didn't make the scene as the primary hero mic, as they call them in the film business. But how cool is that? I put these little rubber gaskets, there's 3 of them, 1, 2, 3 in there. I don't know if you can see them. And then I soldered just a black cable to a nondescript XLR jack. But this was the original prototype that I had made for the film that they really loved, but it just didn't make the film. James Mangold, the director, preferred the DX. But then in the studio, the director said, "Well, what knobs should these guys be touching?" We had procured the Altec console, which is a prop, by the way. That's not a real Altec console, it's a fabrication. As well as all those stacks of those Ampex preamps that you see behind the producers in the control room. And those came from Ron Fennick from Fennick Prop Rentals here on the East Coast in Jersey. And I said, well, they should be doing this and that and that. And then my role evolved where I was training the actors. For instance, Timmy was working the 77 like this. And I said, no, you'd be about 12 to 16 inches away on the 77. We had an old Ampex reel-to-reel machine that we rented from Thump Studios in Brooklyn. And the tape kept running out. And so I became kind of the tape tech. The job evolved quite a bit, which has already led to a number of other really fun projects. Anyway, another microphone that I really loved using on this film was the Reslo RBT. I just am obsessed with this mic, so I pushed it onto set. This is the mic that the Beatles used in the cavern. The ribbon is just amazing, and I've got about a half dozen of these. Me and my friend Josh Rua from Kismet Recording Studios are obsessed with them. We buy every single one that pops up on the internet. So I have some particularly clean ones that we ended up using. Another mic that I love to use, if you look closely at the Newport Folk Festival, all the guitar amps on stage have an Altec 654A. You know what I love about this mic is the history of this mic is so fascinating to me. We all know the SM57, the 58, as like the workhorse mic in the studio and live, of course, primarily live. The 57 primarily in a studio on guitar amps. This was yesteryear's SM57. They used to throw this on everything in the studio. Pick up a couple of these if you don't have them. Obviously, we used a ton of U67s, a ton of 87s. Those were all over CBS Studios at the time. I'd also like to point out that while I was grabbing this mic to show you, the freaking badge fell off. So, hey, Neumann. I even had a 47 that we used. There's a couple other mics I wanted to show you real quick. This was the talkback mic on the Altec console, and this was the gooseneck that this mic was on. There was a point where we were doing a blocking rehearsal and we were just shooting over and over, and James Mangold came in and he said, "Where's the light?" And we were like, "What light?" And he said, "You know, the light, when you press the talkback button, isn't there a light supposed to come on or something?" And Mike Jortner looked at me and we were like, this console doesn't have that. And he's like, "Well, let's get a light in there." And he just walked out of the room. So there was a red glass on this bass, and I took it out and gave it to the electric department, and they just drilled a hole in the console, wired it to a momentary switch. And so when you see him press the button, he's like, "All right, Bob, let's take it again," or whatever. There is a little red light that comes up. It's from this old EV bass that this model EV648 used to live on. There's a few other mics that we used that didn't really make the film. I have this gorgeous, look how clean this 44 is. This was on a stand in the background, but in screening I noticed it never came up. Another mic that I don't have here with me that was on the film is the Sony C38. The Sony C38, that's a great mic. There was a really cute reference photo of Joan and Dylan where they were using the C38, so we really wanted to get it in the film. We almost used an older C37 that was tube powered, but we went with the FET powered 38 because that's what was in the reference photo and we wanted to stay authentic. There's one really cool story I have that I was gifted one of the keychains from the hotel. You know, they're all staying at the hotel, and Dylan gets up early in the morning and leaves on his Triumph, and Joan catches him outside and she's holding one of the keys while she's talking to him. It was gifted to me by Zach, prop number 2, and if you look close, at the bottom it says, "A complete unknown property department." How cool is that? Really cool. Oh, and Bruce Springsteen gave this to me because you'll see all of the equipment in the new Bruce Springsteen Jeremy Allen White biopic is also from JML Studios, so very proud to announce that upcoming film. So let's talk about the outboard gear that I chose to use in the film. Lots of old tubes, cool stuff. Obviously, that's not a real Altec console. The VUs stopped working halfway through this scene, and one thing that's interesting about these films is that it's a $250 million budget. That means it costs about $250,000 an hour to shoot these films. So there was 2 moments I'm extremely proud of. One of them is when the VUs stopped moving, I jumped behind the console and resoldered the 2 jumper pins. You know, there's 2 poles to each VU needle, and I just daisy chained them so they moved together. That was pretty cool. Another moment was at the Newport Folk Festival. While all of the crew was setting up the chairs in the field there, I was on stage with Gary, who is the guitar tech, who I know from Electric Lady, and he had brought the original Bob Dylan, The Band, Hammond B3 organ and said, "Hey man, we're supposed to set this up, let's jam." I said, "Okay, it's just the 2 of us on stage." Out walks Timothee Chalamet in full Bob Dylan garb, like in full costume. And he's like, "Hey guys, can I get in on this jam?" And we were like, "Sure." So he sat down and played this beautiful song, which I never can remember the name. It was an unreleased demo that Dylan did, and it was the song that Timmy just kept playing over and over anytime he was in front of a piano or an organ throughout the full film. I mean, he just kept playing the song over and over, and he had these really long gross fingernails, you know, that Dylan used to have. And he just played this song. I had my elbow leaning up on the organ, and he goes through the whole song, and then he gets up and he's like, "Thanks guys," and he's like walking off the stage, and he said, "That's a really cool Hammond." And I said, "Yeah, that's the original from the band." He's like, "Oh, no way, that's so cool." And as he's leaving, I turn around and the whole crew is just staring at us. In my mind, it was as close to being at the Newport Folk Festival with Dylan on stage as I'll ever get. It was like I was in a time machine. And Gary turns to me and he's like, "Somewhere we're in hospital beds in a coma, and we're gonna wake up any minute." Because it was just such a surreal moment. That was probably my favorite memory from working on that film. So, outboard gear. In the rack, I was tasked to fabricate these racks. Such a fun job. The Pultecs are not real. Those are faceplates that I designed and had silk screened, and then I had the little knobs made because I wanted them to look brand new. All the vintage Pultecs right now that you buy online, not only are they like 10, 15 grand, but they're all beat up. So I had the faceplate silk screened. I bought little potentiometers from Mauser.com and I sourced the knobs. And then I had my tech in Kentucky, Marty Eck from Custom Audio Labs. He built me a daisy-chained LED strip that just plugs into the wall, and then I hot glued the LEDs into the Joule power indicator lights on each Pultec. So those are all daisy-chained and just fake. There's nothing behind those faceplates. The Altecs, if you know anything about me, I have a whole video on how the Altec 436Cs, which are converted into the RS-124s, the famous Abbey Road Beatles compressor. That's my favorite compressor of all time. In fact, that's kind of like my go-to desert island piece. It's on my mix bus at all time, as it is on so many recording studios I go to. You can watch the video I did with Ben Kane at Electric Garden Studios here in Brooklyn. He has them on his mix bus. He uses them on everything, and we've talked about that over and over, how those peerless transformers are just absolute magic. So if you look at CBS Studios, you'll see in the rack, we designed it so it's a bunch of Altec 436s followed by 1591s, which are killer microphone preamps that have a compressor circuit inside of them, followed by RCA BA6As, followed by, which I don't think these made the shot, they're at the bottom of the rack, but Gates Dynamotes, which were old field mixers that were converted into microphone preamps. Oh, there was an awesome microphone that I rented from Blackbird Studios. It's a nickel capsule small diaphragm condenser. That mic has the coolest history of all Neumann microphones, because what they would do is they would grow the nickel diaphragm on top of PVC, and then they would use a chemical that melted the PVC underneath, leaving only the nickel diaphragm, just a few microns thin. And there's only one guy I know of in the world that can reskin or regrow nickel. But when we pulled up the tracks, when Tod Maitland and I pulled up the tracks and listened to Timmy playing this old Martin guitar through the 77DX into the Altecs, into his digital Midas audio rig, and the hair on my arm stood on end, and I was like, that's the record. That's freewheeling Bob Dylan all day. It sounded exactly like the record. And when you listen to the audio in the movie, our executive music supervisor, nicest guy in the world, Nick Baxter, that did La La Land and all these great movies, he's the one that did the music in this. He mixed it and he used all the old gear too. And what you're hearing in the film, as you probably already know by now, is all of the music, the singing, the equipment was being used to make the audio in this movie. This is not karaoke. This is real artists learning to play their instruments. And Timmy had 5 years to do it. I mean, the film, he started practicing for this role 5 years before the release of the film, but he really got it down. I watched Timmy sing Blowin' in the Wind for 8 hours straight, full tilt, without taking a breath. Timmy earned every dime he made in that movie because he's a hard-working dude. If you look close, Nick Baxter is actually playing bass in the house band in that West Village shot where Bob Dylan walks in and gets punched in the face by the guy at the bar. The house band, the bass player, is Nick Baxter. This mic has a crazy story. I've never stolen anything in my life, but before I graduated the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences in 2006, I had 6 study halls and a gym class in high school where I was kicked to the curb, told I was a total failure of a loser, and I dropped out of high school to get my GED my junior year. As I was leaving, as many of us ADHD artists do, I was being thrown out, and I went through the theater and I stole the only thing I've ever stolen in my whole life, this microphone. I made so much money on this microphone through a complete unknown that I contacted my old high school and said, look, I have to rectify this. I told them the whole story, that I stole the mic and I had this horrible experience at high school, and they were like, oh, don't worry about it. I said, no, I want to donate to the high school. So I ended up buying some tablets that the radio program students needed at my old high school, and they sent me a thank you note and a box with an old Glenbard West hat, which next time I go camping, I'll use to start a fire. And I thought that was cool. This is like, I cleared my karma to see this mic up on the screen and to know that when I was at the lowest point of my life, this mic has that incredible story. And I used the money I made on this mic to help bolster the recording program at my old high school 25 years later. So very, very cool. Turning a negative thing into a positive thing, paying it forward. That's really it. I hope you enjoy the movie. If you have any questions or comments about the gear, you can leave it in the comment section below. So that's it. Thanks for watching JML Recording. We'll see you on the other side of the glass.